South Africa announces its withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. Protecting the world's oceans by stemming the tide of overfishing. And a Pakistani tea seller with movie star looks breaks the internet. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin tonight in Iraq, where Islamic State fighters on Friday have launched a major counterattack on the city of Kirkuk. This assault comes as Iraqi and Kurdish forces advance operations to seize territory near Mosul in preparation for an offensive on the jihadists' last major stronghold in Iraq. Now, the United Nations fears that at least 500 families are being used by ISIS as human shields. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis looms. VOA's Heather Maddock reports from northern Iraq.
Despite fears that droves of people will flee their homes and possibly be killed if or when Iraqi and Kurdish Peshmerga forces push through towns and villages to attack Islamic State militants in Mosul, internally displaced families in this camp say they want the battle to come soon.
We hear from the people we know still in Mosul that they just want Islamic State militants to be gone at any cost. They are ready for the militants to get out at any cost.
Islamic State militants have displaced many of the 30,000 people who live here several times, and they arrive exhausted and traumatized from extreme violence. Aid workers say the camps here are full, and they are trying to get more resources to build more emergency housing. They may need more time, they say, but the longer the fighting continues, the worse it will get.
As
long as the operations drag on, there will be more displaced families. That's why people think there will be a lot of refugees. Winter is coming and it will be a big problem. We can't provide homes for all of them.
In the meantime, newly displaced families say they are short on food, clean water, and without beds or tents in the days and weeks after they arrive. They describe harrowing journeys through minefields to get here. And while they are only about 50 kilometers from the nearest battlefield, they say they have nowhere else left to go. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Dibaga, Northern Iraq.
Well, first it was Burundi, and now South Africa is pulling out of the International Criminal Court. The country's Justice Minister, Michael Masuta, on Friday said the ICC's obligations are inconsistent with the country's laws, which give sitting leaders diplomatic immunity. Pretoria said last year it planned to leave the ICC after it was criticized for ignoring a court order to arrest visiting Sudanese President Omar Hassan al-Bashir, who is accused of genocide and war crimes. The document to exit was signed by South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Maite Nkoane Mashabane, on Wednesday. Now, for the latest, VOA South Africa correspondent Anita Powell joins me by phone from Johannesburg. Good evening, Anita.
Hi, Vincent.
Yes, now, is that it? Like, South Africa is out of the ICC?
I'm sure they wish that were the case, but this is a divorce, not a breakup, Vincent. So the letter delivered by the foreign minister to the UN 2 days ago gives a one-year notice. So they still have 12 months before they can actually leave the ICC. And during that time, they still have to honor the ICC's rules. For example, if some wanted ICC, if somebody with the ICC warrant on him or her were to come to South Africa, they would be legally obliged to arrest him or her.
Now, we did mention Sudanese President Omar. How does he come into play here?
Well, one could argue that he started this whole thing. In mid-2015, he came to Johannesburg for an African Union summit. And as you know, he's wanted by the ICC for war crimes. And so South Africa, as an ICC member, was obliged legally to arrest him. They dodged this in several previous trips by just telling him not to come or telling him outright, if you come, we'll arrest you. This time they let him come. They said he had diplomatic immunity because he was attending the summit. And they even violated a local court order that ordered them to detain him. And at the time, I spoke to some people in the Sudanese delegation. They told me that this decision came from the highest level of South African government, which means President Jacob Zuma.
Now, we know we did mention this a little bit when we talked about Burundi, but Anita, help us understand. So what now? This is a divorce. What is the process? Help us understand.
Well, I think this is not only going to be a divorce, but perhaps an acrimonious one. The Justice Minister said that this is going to go through Parliament. Now, Jacob Zuma has the numbers on his side. He leads the ruling African National Congress, and they have a comfortable majority. But the opposition said that they'll challenge the move in court. So this means we're going to have a really noisy battle, and not just in Parliament, but also in the courts. And all of this hubbub really also dings the president himself, who's, I was about to say enjoying decreasing popularity, but the opposite of enjoying. He is suffering decreasing popularity. So this is going to be pretty ugly.
Mm-hmm. Now, very quickly, Anita, South Africa, aside from Omar al-Bashir, doesn't have anything that is on the radar of the ICC, right?
You know, I would always hesitate to say that because that's really the jurisdiction of the prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda. But to answer your question, nobody has recently referred any cases to the ICC or to the UN Security Council looking for the ICC to investigate in South Africa. So tentatively, you could say that, no, South Africa is not under the glare of the ICC at this time.
And no wonder it's such a surprise, a shock to most in Africa. Anita, thank you very much. That's VOA's South Africa correspondent Anita Powell reporting from Johannesburg. Now, more than 200 migrants and refugees were rescued off the Libyan coast in the Mediterranean Sea on Wednesday. At least 5 bodies of migrants who drowned were recovered. Members of the international non-government organization Save the Children participated in the rescue operation. Some migrants told reporters that during their time in Libya, some were only paid in food or working on a construction site. Other migrants say they were not allowed to freely move around in Libya and that everybody has a weapon, or rather has weapons. Now, the migrants are slated to be taken to Italy. Well, in the race for the White House, Republican Donald Trump vowed Thursday that he will accept the outcome of the November 8th U.S. election if he is the winner. Trump's comment came one day after the third and final presidential debate against Democrat Hillary Clinton and followed a repeated refrain that the election is rigged against him. Here's VOA's national correspondent Jim Malone.
Donald Trump was back on the campaign trail Thursday, this time in the critical battleground state of Ohio, where he had a message for his followers.
I would like to promise and pledge to all of my voters and supporters, and to all of the people of the United States, that I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
Trump was following up on a debate moment that made headlines around the world when he was asked by debate moderator Chris Wallace if he would continue the American tradition of accepting the election result, win or lose, and that led to this exchange between Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton.
But that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him.
Trump's refusal to pledge to abide by the results no matter what could worsen his relations with some Republicans who worry that his falling poll numbers now put congressional candidates at risk of losing. Republican strategist John Fury.
Most polls show that about 75 to 80% of the Republican base still strongly supports Donald Trump. And so the establishment figures might be the ones on the outside looking in. And so this has also caused some discord. And all these things have helped Hillary Clinton, who's really kind of stayed out of the headlines and kind of run her own campaign.
Trump now trails Clinton by about 7 points in national polls, a decline that began after the first presidential debate in late September. Even though Trump's supporters cheered his debate performances and his aggressive critique of Clinton, Trump's temperament became a central issue, says Matt Dallek.
The debates do matter in this election, and they might matter more in this election than they have in previous elections, partly because both candidates are fairly disliked. There's a great question in part for Donald Trump about temperament, and for Hillary Clinton it's about trust.
With the debates now behind them, both candidates are focused on getting out the vote efforts in the final few weeks. Voters in more than 30 states are already casting early ballots, including these in Tennessee. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Well, in Friday's business report, U.S. markets opened lower on GE earnings and corporate news. Here's Africa 54's business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting from NASDAQ in New York.
Good afternoon from the NASDAQ market site in New York City. U.S. stocks open down to kick off Friday morning. We can see the S&P 500 down just about 0.5%, erasing gains for the week, largely in part to disappointing earnings out of General Electric. Now, there's a lot of corporate news. We saw last night British American Tobacco has offered to buy the 58% of Reynolds American it doesn't already own for $47 billion in cash and shares, a 20% premium to the last closing price. In other corporate news, senior executives at AT&T and Time Warner met in recent weeks to discuss business strategies, including a possible merger. Now, this is according to sources. And just this morning, according to sources again, Qualcomm is offering $110 per share for NXP Semi. So there's a lot going on in the M&A news. Now, the big news this week in the States has been the national election and the further divide it's creating between the Trump and Clinton supporters. This truly is a case where reality is more interesting than fiction. Most analysts do not expect the markets to be affected just from the results alone. Historically, despite the real short-term risk of volatility and potential policy uncertainties, the likely long-term outcome of the election is continued economic growth and consequent market gains. But this is why Africans and the continent have to care. As you know, I hosted a series of interviews at the NASDAQ market site for the Africa Investor Summit. This was the same week that President Obama was at the United Nations for another event, and the theme was aid to trade to institutional investment, where the U.S. is putting a lot of money into African investments. And I think this is going to be one of President Barack Obama's legacies of his presidency, the continued investment and how Africa has become a big focal point for the U.S. So a Trump win with his more protectionist ideals might not be good for that investment and trade, whereas you would think Hillary Clinton would continue with Barack Obama's policies, as well as her husband, who started AGOA, which has been one of the largest investments that have been made into the continent. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Joe Malandrino for Africa 54.
Well, thank you, Jill. Now, in Central Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo is delaying presidential elections originally set for next month by nearly 2 years. The United Nations warns that tensions could lead to more violence, and the current political crisis certainly is not helping the nation's struggling economy. Emily Eob has more from Kinshasa.
The normally bustling streets of capital Kinshasa are empty. It's October 19th, and the opposition has called a general strike to press President Joseph Kabila to step down at the end of his second mandate in December. But some, like charcoal trader Mireille Samba, simply can't afford politics.
I agree with the idea of the strike. It teaches the authorities to listen to the people. But I had to go to work today because there is no food at home. If I had not, my children would have gone hungry today, so I came out, despite the risks, to try to sell a little.
More than half of Congolese live below the poverty line, and the political impasse is not helping an already weakened economy. The global slump in commodity prices has hit Africa's biggest copper producer. The local currency, the Congolese franc, has slid significantly against the dollar, officially by more than 10% this year, but as much as 25% on the black market.
Quand la monnaie perd sa valeur,
when the local currency loses value, it means that most of the imported goods will cost more, and that will impact people's purchasing power.
At Kinshasa's main market, traders have had to raise prices.
This is bad for everyone. You see us now at 3 p.m. already packing up and going home. It is because there are no customers.
political headquarters in Kinshasa still bear the scars of violent protests last month that killed over 50 people, according to right groups. Continued unrest could deter foreign investors. Foreign investment dropped the country's surge in GDP growth prior to 2015.
If all the political parties find an agreement, it will be okay. But if they do not, it will affect the economy and impact inflation.
The path to consensus looks cloudier than ever. The majority of the opposition has rejected an agreement signed this week. That deal keeps Kabila in office until elections, now pushed to April 2018. Amy Diab for VOA News in Kinshasa.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Coming up, a new initiative aims to protect the world's oceans. Stay with us.
From science and technology, here's what's new.
What's new? Google has released its first ever smartphone, the 32-gigabyte Pixel and the 128-gigabyte Pixel XL. The Pixel is a little shorter and a little more narrow than the iPhone 7. The back of the phone is two-tone with a partial plastic plate available in white, black, or blue. It's got a 12-megapixel camera, and the folks at Google are, not surprisingly, saying good things about it. Here's Google's Brian Rakowski.
This isn't only the best camera we've ever made. It's the best smartphone camera anyone has ever made.
Regarding the technical aspects of this phone, and I'll try to be quick here, it's got a Super Dragon 821 chip, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and 32 gigs of storage for the Pixel, 128 gigs for the Pixel XL. It's got a USB Type-C port, a headphone jack, and it can shoot 4K video. And it's got its own assistant who's not related to Siri.
Hi, how can I help?
Well, you could start by lowering that price of $650. For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Groshans.
Hundreds of millions of people worldwide depend on the ocean for their livelihoods. Approximately 3 billion rely on it as a primary food source. Unfortunately, the world's oceans are being threatened by overfishing, illegal fishing, and habitat destruction. Now, a new website was recently launched to make illegal fishing more transparent and reportable to authorities. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
At the recent Our Ocean Summit held in Washington, world leaders, scientists, and environmentalists from 90 nations took action to save the world's oceans and fisheries. With the launch of Global Fishing Watch, which accesses the Automatic Identification System, or AIS, to track satellite data on the movement and classification of shipping vessels worldwide, anyone with an internet connection can report illegal fishing and request enforcement. Actor and environmental activist Leonardo DiCaprio explained its promise.
One solution that is poised to address global overfishing and illegal fishing is a new platform called Global Fishing Watch. This innovative technology is the result of a powerful partnership that leverages the unique skills of each participating organization. Google's ability to organize big data and inform and make it universally accessible, SkyTruth's ability to use satellites to monitor threats to the planet, and Oceana's ability to execute winning campaigns to bring back fishery abundance. Today, this unprecedented technology is available to everyone in the world.
The world's oceans can feed 1 billion people every day, but overfishing has led to the collapse of fisheries around the world, which threatens ocean health and global food supplies. Environmental fishing policies can restore the world's fisheries only if they're enforced. Now, with Global Fishing Watch, governments can ensure fishing vessels are authorized to fish in their waters and pursue those that are not. Seafood suppliers can see how and where fish are being caught. Journalists and researchers can study the impact of fishing on ocean health. Anyone with an internet connection can see whether vessels are following the rules, so sustainably caught sea fish can be certified for consumers, and anyone can identify suspicious vessels and report them to the authorities. Global Fishing Watch is designed for governments, seafood suppliers, journalists, researchers, citizens, fishermen, and more. It's free, global, and provides real-time data. The platform creates transparency to ensure that fishing laws can be enforced and oceans are protected. The launch of Global Fishing Watch is a game changer. Anyone and everyone can help bring back healthy oceans and save fisheries to feed the planet. To learn more, visit globalfishingwatch.org. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a Pakistani tea seller revels in social media stardom. We'll be right back.
Notice to withdraw from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court has been submitted to the Secretary General of the United Nations.
La situation qui prévaut en République démocratique du Congo.
We're looking at a $500 million fund from their side, which would primarily focus on exploration.
Yeah.
This is Africa 54. Welcome back. I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick. Let's take a look at what is trending this Friday. This is one of the electric vehicles up for hire in Hangzhou. It's housed in a building referred to as the Candy Machine. With cars piled high in the 5-story building, it looks like a giant vending machine. It's named after the company behind the project. Vehicles can be rented out for under $4 an hour. Hangzhou is also home to what is said to be the first bike share scheme in China, boasting 2,700 stations. So if you're looking to rent a car but don't want to drive it, Tesla's chief executive Elon Musk says all new Tesla motor models will come with hardware that enables them to be fully self-driving. The Silicon Valley electric car company is vying to be the first among many rivals to get autonomous vehicles on the road. Tesla says its Model S and Model X electric cars are already being produced with the new hardware, which includes 8 cameras, 12 updated sensors and radar with faster processing. Musk says that by the end of 2017, we can expect to see Teslas drive in full autonomous mode from Los Angeles to New York without the need for a single touch on the steering wheel. And finally, it sounds like a bit of a social media Cinderella story. A blue-eyed tea seller from Islamabad scores a modeling contract after featuring in an Instagram post that happened to go viral. Well, it's a true story for 18-year-old Arshad Khan, who was photographed last weekend at a bazaar in the Pakistani capital. The Instagram post spread to Twitter and Facebook and kicked off a search for the name of the good-looking vendor. Arshad had only been making tea for 3 months when he was discovered. His picture and post swooning over it was shared on social media worldwide, including India, which is Pakistan's arch rival. Not so sure about a happy ending there. And that is what is trending today. Over to you, Vincent.
Haiti, thank you very much. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. We leave you now with the music of the Tanzania group Jaguar Music. Now, good night from all of us in Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. Listen to U.S. President Barack Obama use this word when talking about Islamic militants.
So the bottom line is this. Our objective is clear, and that is to degrade and destroy ISIL so that it's no longer a threat, not just to Iraq, but also to the region and to the United States.
In our story, the word objective means a goal or aim. The president said the U.S. objective is to destroy the Islamic State militant group.
When used as an adjective, objective has a different meaning. It means to look at something with an open mind, free of emotion.
Now, the next time you hear the word objective, you will know what this news word means.